and welcome to 2025. Here we go. Generation Movie. My name is JW Colwell. I am joined as always by my incredible host, co-host, Rich Drees. Rich,
Good evening, everybody.
how are you? How was your holiday? How are you feeling? How is everything going?
Holiday was good. Spent it with some friends, which is always nice. Lovely time. We had a great time. Let's see. New Year was nice. I'm off to, I think, what's today? The 13th. I have 12 movies that are new to me under my belt so far for this year.
There you go. I am not doing as well. I have, as you know from our personal chit chats, not on a podcast, I have had dental problems since the since the start of our break through January. So I've seen one old movie and one new movie in 2025. I saw Seven in IMAX, which may give you I don't know, a minor hint of something that might be coming up. And I saw Nosferatu, which I don't mean to go against the grain on this one. I liked it. I didn't love it.
Okay.
And for two reasons, and I was hung up on it, and the person I was seeing it with, it was really interesting. They had never seen the reason I was hung up. Why I was hung up. I was hung up because it very much is reminiscent of Bram Stoker's Dracula, right? It plays almost the exact same beats. There's an incredible sense of dread, an incredible sense of imposing, and I think Eggers is a really great director.
Yes,
I was not thrilled with the Orlok look. I was also like because I'm interested in the dynamics we used to have with vampire movies where before Twilight, right? Before there were like glittery vampires were sexy and dangerous. Mm-hmm. And for me, Orlok didn't have anything compelling. Like, I know why you hook up in the woods with it. You know what I mean? Like, oh, it's just some rando in the woods. So I was a little bit, in the mustache and everything. It was a good performance. I thought Johnny Depp's daughter, Lily Depp, was really good. And I like Emma Corrin who's from The Crown, and certainly a much better movie for Aaron Taylor Johnson. You know what I mean? Like there, little things. And Nicholas Hoult it never disappoints me. Mm-hmm. But I didn't love it. I don't know why. I just, you know what I mean? Like, you ever go into a movie and you're like, I'm gonna love this, and then you come out of it and you're like, I didn't love it. And
yeah, that's
fair.
Where,
it was just one of those things where I was like, I had something in my head about like Skarsgård, because I think Skarsgård's a pretty good looking man. And so I was like, I think it's going to be, I thought it was going to be a little bit sexier than it was. And then it wasn't as, like, it was just more imposing dread, which was cool. You know what I mean? Any good vampire movie worth its salt has imposing dread and whatnot.
Sure. Well, I mean, any of Eggers' movies.
Yes. Imposing, slow, and dread.
They exist in a universe where there is definitely evil as a palpable force, and it's quite possible God doesn't exist, though, to balance that out.
Not only God doesn't exist, God is like, I've taken a rain check on this. I'm not here. But I like the visuals.
Creating life here. I'll be back.
I like the visuals. I like, you know what I mean? Like the visuals, the imposing. I liked all of that. I did like this slight change in where vampires are biting people. I thought that was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. But then it wasn't like I was thinking of the scene in and again, I got hung up on Bram Stoker's Dracula. Like the idea that I've seen this and I've seen it better. Do you know what I mean? Like, you ever have that when you're watching a movie where you're like, Like the sequence where like he's on top of her and there's like it's a little bit lusty and they pan out and he doesn't look great, as opposed to like the vampire that goes after Lucy in Bram Stoker's Dracula, and that thing looks sexy as hell by comparison. You know, like the
Yeah.
giant fang creature beast. And so I was just like, okay, it was okay. 7 in IMAX was revealing because it's I think the most light that the movie's ever been projected in. So so like where you might have trouble before with like looking at things and seeing things in the backgrounds and being able to notice stuff, I found the IMAX screen, the big screen, really nice and palpable. And that movie, I'm just gonna say it. That movie's one of my favorites. That's why we'll be doing it next week.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! The two that were for our comeback shows, the two movies we talked about were Seven, and the movie we're doing tonight. And this movie right here is what we're doing tonight. We're doing the Goonies.
We'll get to that in a moment.
Yeah, we'd be remiss. We'd be remiss as a movie Hollywood show to not talk about the sheer volume of tragedy that is happening in Los Angeles, right? The idea that all of the stuff that we love is produced in this magic factory of a place that you just visited, right?
Yeah.
That you were just there and kind of, you know?
Yeah, looking at some of the maps over the weekend of, especially the Palisades fire, because there's a couple different ones, that kind of are ringing the city in a way. I was within a couple of 1,000 feet of the southernmost portion of where the fire is gone. I was looking at some video I shot as I was driving through Santa Monica. Just put my phone in the cradle on the dashboard, set it like this, and just shot some video footage as I was driving down 4th Street, which is this very wide street with these beautiful tall palm trees and stuff, just to have. And as I alluded to before we got on the air, when I was looking at this footage over the weekend, I was checking the intersections that I started and stopped at. And literally, when I started filming, I was exactly parallel, just out of the frame of my camera, of the exterior location for Fletch's apartment building from Fletch. I just missed it.
Were you worried about the ex-wife's lawyer showing up for you?
Yeah,
asking for money?
Yeah.
That is a,
I was kind of
just for clear, that's a deep cut. That is a deep Fletch cut.
Yes, but what I want to say is, and Natasha and I talked about this yesterday when we were recording the new episode of Big Picture, which will be out later this week, and it's going to be a bear to edit. There's a lot of, people are concentrating maybe on the fact that, Billy Crystal and his wife lost their house, or, rich person this or rich person that lost their house, or celebrity. And a lot of times celebrities are just like middle-class jobbing actors who you happen to know their names. Denise Crosby, for example, not a rich person. She doesn't live in a mansion. And it's a tragedy because, it doesn't matter what their income level is. This is still the home where their children took their first steps. They made many, many, many innumerable memories of family, of maybe their grandchildren as well. And all of that, that tangible link to your own past and to those beautiful, wonderful times is now gone. And that's going to hurt anybody. Like I said, it doesn't matter what your fucking financial situation is. And honestly, a lot of these people, a lot of their net worth was tied up in their homes, and that's all literally just smoke and
you couple that with a terribly ineffectual insurance industry that just so happened right before, we had it happen in Florida where a bunch of companies kind of just pulled up right before hurricane season. And then you have the same thing going on in California where these insurance companies are just pulling out right as the wildfire season starts. And then you also have like this weird thing we're in right now in this dark timeline where everything is tied to politics in some way.
Yeah,
It's
that's what
all
I was kind of getting to. I don't want this to become like a culture war thing. Let's be better than that, people. Let's have some empathy. Look, I
a
think James
disaster is a
Woods,
disaster, whether you're
yes,
rich or you're
James Woods
poor.
is an absolute odious person, but I
It's
still
not just James
wouldn't
Woods.
want his house to have burned down. And it turns
Yeah,
out
no,
it didn't. I'm happy for him that he still has his home. And honestly, I would also hope it would cause him to have a few moments of self-reflection. But
that's
ultimately,
asking
though,
a lot.
I wouldn't wish this on anybody, even somebody as
But
terrible as James
I
Woods.
think the
Although I do
problem
like him in Once Upon a Time in America, I will say that.
the, the thing about it, it's a weird thing. We're in this very, you know, it's interesting. Hollywood still produces movies every year that people go and flock to theaters to see or flock to stream. So, you can gloat and everything, but I don't think you realize we had one strike and one end of a pandemic,
Yeah.
and the world, like an entire section of the country, basically like a segment of our economy, kind of dried
Mm-hmm.
up. So let's not get wrap up in things. Don't be a shitty human. Be a good human.
Yeah.
Try to be better.
So many people below the line whose names you don't know, who aren't celebrities, are also affected by this, have also lost their homes, have also lost like all of their possessions.
Well,
How
do you
many
like stunt
cameras?
work? Do you like stunt work? They don't make a lot of money. Those
Mhm.
people don't make a lot of money. They live in Hollywood because that's where the work is. So, do you like John Wick
It's
movies? Do you like? It's
mhm.
just one of those things where we've lost a fundamental capacity to be empathetic, and also it's a fun thing to just like blame somebody else for actual real world problems. Like, it's much easier to blame a bunch of politicians or people in charge of fire brigades as opposed to actually going, hey, why are these winds so strong coming off the ocean? What's going
Mhm.
on there? Why is it always warm weather? And it just,
And
we don't want to talk about
let's get this situation taken care of first before we start to go, okay, as we rebuild, how do we make our water delivery better for in case, we have fires like this again? What can we do differently as we rebuild to
I don't know that
mitigate
we're capable. I
anything
don't know
like
that
this
we're
ever
capable anymore. I don't know that we're capable of being empathetic. And the thing is, the place where where anywhere where you and I might have learned empathy or following along with characters that we love and we know and whatever, they were Hollywood films that taught us to, maybe don't make fun of the person that has a problem with their face. Or maybe, you know what I mean? Like, so it's this giant circle, and
happened.
I'm just wishing the best for everybody that lives out there, all the people I know, the people I've met like in the last year or so, the
Mhm.
folks for Cannibal Comedian and the folks for, some of the other things we've met that are out there living their lives. They had to evacuate, but they had to, like, Ryan James, our good friend from Cannibal Comedian, the network's good friend. I saw him with a bunch of like one of the only things he could save were all the decks of all the movies they've been working on, like on files, and just left his house with just a big collection of files. He had a big picture about it. Of course, I've shared the picture about Robert Redford's Oscar, and you go, "Who gives a shit about Robert Redford's Oscar?" And it's like, yeah, but you know what? That's where he raised his family. That's where he built Sundance. That's where the artistic and the love and the compassion that came out of that man and his life. It's just, don't be a dick. Try not being a dick.
Yeah.
That's I was trying to come up with a New Year's resolution. New Year's resolution is don't be a douche. Be nicer.
It's good to
Be
I mean, dude, you don't have to work that hard at that because you already pretty much aren't a douche. except when we're off camera, and then you're a complete douche.
Then
to me,
I'm terrible. I'm awful.
But I understand why. I'm a terrible person. I deserve it. But
I don't know. With all the dental stuff that's happened to me, I'm like, God's going. If I believed in a higher power, like the karma aspects of tooth problems, mouth issues, back issues, feet issues, the 3 worst things you can have in your life.
I've got some dental issues that are going to be taken care of in the next couple months that I'm not looking forward to either. Trust me, I'm like
the worst. And I will. Can I just want to tell a quick story. You told your great flight story. This isn't as good, but I will tell you, like, it's not this good. It's not as good. But what I'm going to tell you is one of my favorite things ever. Is that so? The dentist I go to, the doctor is he's short with people. He's short with patients. He's short with people that help him, like assistants.
Short-tempered.
Yeah, he's a short-tempered guy, and I was getting a root canal, and he had this nice, 40-something lady who said, I'm a bit discombobulated. I got going late for work. I didn't get my coffee. Like, she was just having an off day. And he was so fucking mean to her. And he's like, I don't know what discombobulated means. And, and don't cry. And I was just like, I was sitting there, like, in the chair with this guy's, covered hand in my mouth, like, he's sticking me. And I just wanted to say, can you not be so awful to people? Can you just be nice? Can we just
not be a dick?
Don't be a dick. And she made a mistake on one of the 2 other numbers that she'd be saying to her, and he's like, no, not that, 30. Like, and I was like, I don't want to fucking deal with this. This is the worst. Like, it's
I'm so glad my dentist is a nice guy who takes an interest.
I had a tooth out. I had a root canal. I have another root canal scheduled for tomorrow. And it's been brutal. But the guy who took my tooth out, it started out scary, and then he was really great, like really nice, like the kind of guy. I was coming out of the office going, I would like to stalk him a little bit and try to become friends. And that's the kind of dentist you want, right? You want somebody that's.
Hey, my doctor's like that. We're Facebook friends, and he gave me a location for one of our short films. So,
Okay. Good evening, gentlemen. Good evening, Joe Ridgely.
Hey,
we're gonna get Joe. Hi, guys. Hi, Missy Defina. Thank you for the kind words you wrote about me. Also, thank you for all your reviews. Yeah, and I hope everything's going well. And I know Hunter went back and all these other things, but I hope you're feeling well. I know you've been putting up a lot of reviews. We appreciate you on the page and the network and everything. So thank you for that. One other thing I want to talk about before we get started tonight, and this is the craziest thing because it's going to happen.
And we haven't gotten started.
Yeah, we haven't gotten started. Well, it's been a while. We haven't done a show in a month. So, let's talk about one of the bad things about American copyright law, because it has to be discussed. This year we are going to get bombarded. This is one of them. Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare. And this is from the same guy who did Pooh, Blood and Honey, and the terrifying Winnie the Pooh movie. But he's also got we also have Screamboat coming out. So let me ask you about this disturbing trend as things start to get into the public domain, which at this point I'm kind of going, I don't think we should do it anymore. I think the public domain thing should go away. I do like the public domain that you can create and borrow characters and whatever. But once we get characters that you and I have grown up with, where we're
a few years away from Superman, yes.
Yes, I'm just concerned with the level of garbage that we're gonna get. Now, don't get me wrong, I kind of like Pooh, Blood and Honey, but I read some synopses on the Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare, and I don't know that I need my Tinkerbell to be a heroin addict. I'm just saying.
Jesus Christ, really?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Anything
Here,
you could think of. Like I was sitting there going, um, okay, well yeah, I guess I don't know. I guess she could have been. She's a little
somebody
pixie
asked me
dove.
about this this past weekend, and I kind of like, I guess I had some pent up anger about it because I just kind of unleashed with anytime you take something that's going right into the public domain and turn it into a horror film of all things, you've got the most lazy, low effort, low intellect fucking idea you could do with it. No, not take something and find something creative or new way to interpret it. Let's just turn it into, here's something you used to like that was cute and cuddly and now it's going to kill you. That's just such an easy and cheap idea.
Well, I don't want to pick on everything because we do have David Howard Thornton who's very talented as Art the Clown, and he's doing the Steamboat Willie horror movie, The Screamboat. They just released pictures of him. I don't want to get on everybody, but I do want to ask questions.
I think there's more that you can do with characters, and do something kind of interesting, or just there are ways to use them that I think that could be used to comment on them how they were originally or not. How would you reinterpret a writing exercise? I do is I look at an old sitcom or TV show and I'll go, how would you repitch this show today for a 21st century audience? One of my favorite, little mental exercises was when I did WKRP in Cincinnati, and I tried to repitch that. How would you change those things and reinterpret those characters while still remaining clear to the core themes of the show?
A podcast network.
That's an idea. Actually, I was kind of like,
network.
I just had the station as the only station that wasn't owned by a corporation in town. And they were kind of like scrappy underdogs.
They were kind of scrappy underdogs. Scrappy.
But I think, how do you take Winnie the Pooh and turn it into something, that still remains true to like the core ideas of like that thing? I mean, obviously, Calvin and Hobbes is the modern day version of Winnie the Pooh.
I just think
an animal that becomes a companion to a kid, an imaginative kid.
I think we're barking up an interestingly bad tree, and not everybody's going to be as creative as some people are creative. Like I was thinking about stuff that hit the public domain. Like we're not going to get Benedict Cumberbatch as Sherlock in a lot of these things. You know what I mean? Like, and that's like, or we're not going to get like the good Sherlock show that CBS did a couple years ago, or maybe the good Watson show that they're going to work on that's coming out. So I don't know. But
next year, Betty Boop goes into the public domain. Do we want like
heroin?
This weird sexualized Betty Boop going around stabbing people?
She's already sexualized. That's heroin stripper Betty Boop is definitely coming. So we should be prepared, especially in this nightmare escape we call a timeline.
I mean, if you want stabby Betty Boop, just remake like the Angel movies from the mid '80s.
High schooler by day.
Kind of it. That's kind of what it would be.
Hooker by night. Let's get back to
Scrappy by day.
Let's get back to Scrappy Underdogs. I couldn't find my Goonies shirt, but I do have this. They're my two reaction figures. I have Mikey, leader of the Goonies. I have Data, the most important member of the Goonies.
Exactly.
And shit. There we go. There. It comes with pictures of hell. So, but yeah, let's talk about this movie because I was thinking about it. Oh, thank you, Missy. You're welcome. I heart you. I heart you back. Let's talk about this movie. This movie. I
love that print.
Isn't that a great print? The shit
stunning.
You can find when you go online. I was thinking about you and I taking a trip and going out to Astoria for the 40th anniversary and going to Astoria. But then I realized in 2015 they closed a lot of the stuff down. You can't go around the town as much anymore. Anyway, So this is the movie of the night. We're starting off 2025 with a personal favorite, The Goonies. I rewatched today in 4K, stunning 4K. And it was so we're talking about Nosferatu, and now I'm talking about this, and I like you ever like think like, oh, that movie's a little clunky, and then you go back and you watch it, and you're like, no clunk, no clunk, no clunk at all, baby. Hour and 53 minutes of smooth Richard Donner, Steven Spielberg magic. But I want to talk about production first because production's interesting. Because the production stories you get, the production stuff you hear, is all about, for me, where they filmed, how they filmed, but also the sheer volume. And it's come up in various documentaries about the movie and wherever. It's the sheer volume of how Richard Donner and Spielberg had to handle the cast. And it ties into the whole core of the movie, right? The young cast. This is one of the rewatching it today, right? With everything you and I see, this is one of the best acted kids movies. You know,
yeah.
It's one of those movies where you watch it and you're like, well, some of them were stars already. Brolin wasn't. It's his first movie. Like, you sit back and you marvel at all the stuff that's going on, and then you just go, well, how did it happen? So they do production principal photography, October 22nd, 1984. It lasted 5 months. So it started in October, and it didn't get done until beginning of 85. And then it gets released on June 7th. So it's not a lot of time to play around with shit, right?
Yeah. There's a really good book that I didn't have time to pull out that I read a few years back on the making of Goonies. And it's told it was written by like a guy who was a teenager in Astoria at the time and managed to get a job on the crew. He then grew up and became a newspaper guy in Oregon. And it's a really, this movie's kind of like a boy's adventure kind of a thing. And the book almost reads the same way in terms of like movie making.
Well,
it's hard to find, but if you find it and you love Goonies, check out the book. I recommend it.
Yeah, like a lot of the background story in this movie is the coaching. Is Donner playing bad cop, Spielberg sometimes playing good cop, right? Going, hey, don't give people a rough shit. But the idea of using techniques to create realistic performances from these kids who were apparently, by all reports, like chaos when all put together.
Can't understand why.
Yeah, well, no, but like it's very hard to go, well, putting them all together and then seeing them all together. Like, some people might be mild, you know what I mean? Like, some people could be whatever. But in this particular case, they were a rampaging pack of kids who were all super talented. And so they all had to be coached for different reasons and different things. And so that's the preeminent story you get. We always get these great stories about production. And like, so for example, the one that's really an interesting one, the production designer, J. Michael Riva, designed the ship, the pirate ship.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a full-size replica of a pirate ship that was basically put in one of the largest Warner Brothers sets in California. Oddly enough, we're talking about the California wildfire, so Warner Brothers is there. And so...
Well, the Warner's lot is well away from what's going on.
Well, no, but I'm just... the idea that the magic that comes out of the city is more what I was going for. But anyway, so he built this giant set, and what Donner did was he didn't allow them to glimpse it until it was done and it was revealed to the characters. So the idea that the first glimpse of the ship was the actual actor's first glimpse of it as well made it realistic. Although they had to fix the cut because the second take, because the cast was so overwhelmed on the first take that they had to reshoot the scene. And the sad part about this particular story is that entire set was destroyed after shooting because nobody wanted, which is the saddest thing.
Insane to me.
That's crazy. It's like Jaws ending up in a fucking. It's like one version of Jaws ending up in a fucking garbage dump. So one of the other things that comes up, Sean Astin, in his book "They're Back Again After the Hobbit," after Lord of the Rings, basically say Donner and Spielberg were like co-directors. So there's another side story of this is that Spielberg is again on the set a lot with different directing styles, right? And it's something where we talk about it a lot with Spielberg, but he was good with kids. Like the kid performances in Spielberg movies, one of the reasons you and I talk fondly about Amblin movies, one of the reasons that everybody holds them so dear is because the kids' performances are they're so timely and well done. And like, you think of the performances in E.T., you think of performances in you think of Quan in Temple of Doom, right? The performances by kids in Spielberg stuff is off the charts. It's also led to an unhyped.
Donner was reticent to take this job because he felt he didn't have any kind of affinity for kids, working with kids, even though, he did The Omen, for goodness sakes.
Oh, I can't imagine why I wouldn't have an affinity for kids doing The Omen, Rich.
I don't know. Hanging around on set with the Antichrist for 6 weeks would make me want to give up kids.
Like so much of it, like shot in it was filmed on location in Astoria. The Classop County Jail that features the beginning of the Fratelli set piece. It's been converted into the Oregon Film Museum, which opened in the 25th anniversary of The Goonies, which is amazing. The museum where Mikey's dad works, where Mr. Walsh works, is an actual museum in reality, Captain George Flavel House Museum. And then the house is real. So, they filmed on location for a decent chunk of change. Then they found different locations, including the Burbank Goonies set, the One Eyed Willie set. And then the final scene was shot in Golden Goat Rock State Beach, in Sonoma County. I'm still roughing from my fucking mouth. And it's also, but it's one of those things where the production style, the way it's done, the way Donner gets vivid, real performances out of the kids, it's one of those things that has followed the movie through its entire history, right? These kid characters are some of the best kid characters we've ever seen on film. They're all hyper realized. Like Mouth is realized, Mikey's realized, Brand to a certain extent is super realized, Data's realized, Chunk is really realized. And as a fat kid growing up, like I didn't want to ever have to do the truffle shuffle, so I was a different kind of fat kid. Like that shit ain't happening, right? You're not gonna see that shit. I'm not that kid. But the performances are so great.
So, and it's not just like individual performances. I think the way you pair some of these kids up works really well too. Like Sean Astin and Brolin have great. They feel like younger brother, older brother. They
do, and you know what? You know what scene they get it immediately? They're on the porch after the bad guys have delivered the foreclosure notice, and Mikey has a scene where he kind of walks around the porch, and Brand comes the other side, and he gives him a hug, and then all you see is him dragging Mikey with the hug, and fucking Aston's feet are just hanging out, and he drags him into the house.
But like all the scenes though between like Martha Plimpton and Corey Feldman, there is such a great, fun, bickery energy that 10 years later, those two hooked up in a very regretful evening that they both will never talk about. It's you kind of get the feeling.
What do you know, Rich?
That's gonna not end well. That's gonna not end well. I refuse.
But I think
if they don't talk about it, I'm not going to talk about all the times I did it as well.
The production design, everything, like it's all kind of like that set at the end of the movie is so pronounced and so amazing, right? It's so easy to act on that set. The idea that we scrapped that set in its entirety makes me sad. Production wise,
Hollywood scrapped the Titanic. Okay, they scrapped James Cameron's Titanic when that could have been a tourist attraction that people would still be coming to today.
They could be staying in it. But
I know.
I think another thing that has to be talked about, music and soundtrack. It is a banging 85 soundtrack. You got Cyndi Lauper, you got REO Speedwagon, the Bangles, right? You had the video that came out after the movie Goonies Are Good Enough. That video was on a constant rotation on MTV, and it was a great choice to put her on the soundtrack. Another side note, we did a Tootsie line earlier. David Grusin is the guy who does the score for this movie, and it has been unavailable for 25 years. The main Fratelli Chase theme, though, Rich, has been used so many times in trailers, Interspace, Scrooge, Guarding Test, all those movies. And it's just one of those things where the idea that this soundtrack was built from the ground up and then they didn't pay attention to the theme music, but instead Warner Brothers used it for a bunch of other movies to put in their trailer because it was so good. And I was thinking about it today. Interspace is definitely one of those trailers where it's got Goonies energy because of the music, right? It's got Gonzo energy. And I think the most interesting thing is how the kids were talked to, how they were treated, how they built a camaraderie together that clearly shows on screen. The other, you were talking about Plimpton. Plimpton and Feldman are great. Plimpton and Kerri Green are really great too because it's two girls that are very different in their approach to life. Like we see Martha Plimpton early on, she's getting like a crab out of a bucket, like putting her whole head in and grabbing a crab. And Kerri Green's on the cheerleader thing. Production note, the idea that the entire Fratelli Chase sequence wraps around the entire cast is not something you notice in 1985 when you're watching it, right? But it's something as you get older and you go, oh, this chase sequence touches all of them, hits all of them at one point or another before they escape on the beach. And it's like one of those things where you go, wow, that's a nice touch, Richard Donner. Richard Donner, I think, is one of the directors that we're going to get to this year because we have a Superman movie coming out, and I think we're going to discuss Donner's Superman and Superman 2 when we get to July. And I think he's one of those directors that his workmanship and the way he deals with pragmatic solutions to his filmmaking are something we don't have anymore. He's not. He's kind of an animal that doesn't exist in Hollywood anymore.
Yeah,
but
true. Unfortunately, before we kind of move away from this part of the talk, while we're still talking about the kids for some, at least in part. When I was rewatching this, there's a moment where Corey Feldman's character, where they're in the wishing well, and he goes, "I'm taking wishes back."
Them all back.
There's an anger there. There's a hurt there that I'm just like, man, I wish I saw more of this kind of acting from him in later years, because that is a performance I think probably beyond his years. I don't think, not many child actors that age, 11, 12, 13, whatever he is there, could really muster that the way he did.
Well,
and it's a great moment. And I think it encapsulates the feelings of all the kids, and they're all like mad, but he's the one who actually vocalizes it. And that becomes like the core driver of why they're doing everything.
This one was my wish, and it didn't come true. Taking them all back. That happens right before Mikey Kid delivers the it's our time down here speech, which is also way beyond his years, but also kind of funny because he would eventually become Samwise, and it would be his time with Frodo. Like I like the there is a lot of talent with the kids. Like that's not like the interesting thing isn't that they found talented kids for a Steven Spielberg movie. The interesting thing is they got across the board performances.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's not a kid performance in the movie that's shitty. Like
No.
You and I see a lot of movies with kids, and we see a lot of movies where we go, that kid almost sunk the movie. That kid almost. But this movie has really good kid performances across the board. And I was also paying very close attention to Ke Huy Quan. Oscar winner Ke Huy Quan, right? And he has a great sequence where he gets really upset right before the Fratelli show up at the end on the boat, and he's just mumbling to himself, and he's on camera though, and like all the other Goonies are doing shit, and he's mumbling to himself, and it's like yeah, they're talking about my stuff, and my stuff doesn't work, but all my stuff has worked, and like he's just like it is a 40-year-old trapped inside. It's a 40 everywhere all at once, everywhere everything all at once performance trapped in a child's body, because it's the same thing. It's just an energy where he's just like, and then he comes out, he's like, I'm going to take on the Fratellis, and it's like his glove doesn't work, and he fires the pincher. He's like, I don't know, I'm just upset, and it's just everything.
And he does a good job with stuff that, I mean, okay, taking a half step back, we know there was, an octopus that they filmed and then they cut.
I saw it. We're going to get to that. I saw it.
I know. In the Fratelli chase in the beginning of the film, there was a lot more like some slapstick stuff. There was like a circus something or other that got disrupted. So I always had a feeling, the more I read about stuff that's been cut from the movie, and obviously you can't cut Sloth, but there's part of it that feels a little, some of the stuff around the edges, especially when you start to consider what was cut, feels like they weren't quite sure what the tone was going to be, that there was some of it was a little bit more cartoony than others. And the stuff that Key got, was probably the most cartoonish of it all, but he manages to really make it work as a kid actor. Again, there's that, like you said, where he's talking about, what do you mean my stuff doesn't work? Blah, 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 blah. It was beautiful, that he, as a kid, he kind of like gets that kind of like dejected but defiant still thing, which is again a different variation of what Corey Feldman was doing an hour before in the movie. And
but that's the thing, there's not a bad kid performance in it, and that's
no, there's not
that's
despite
amazing.
The fact that I think they only found the tone of this movie once they got into the editing room.
Well, and that's what okay, so I'm going to show one other Sloth picture because it has to, before we move on. I'm going to show one other Sloth picture because it is the most important Sloth picture to me. And it's also a mental thing that's just weird that I discovered later in life. But I don't know if you know this, but it's because of something. But I know you might know. Just so we're clear, Sloth is a Raider. I love the Raiders. John Matuszak was a Raider. Sloth is wearing a Raider shirt for most of the movie until he rips it off to reveal the Superman chest. So I just want to get it out there that one of the coolest characters in this particular movie that's super cool for generations is a Raiders fan. And that may be parental abuse. That may be a parental abuse thing where, Mama Fratelli's allowed him to wear a Raider shirt because it's abusive. But I just want it out there. So let's go to I've forgotten how to do this, Rich. We've been gone for a while. Box office.
Like more bicycle.
Yeah, I know. Just got to get pumping. So box office. We use a great site called The Numbers. They did not have, however, the global international box office for the movie, which this movie in 1985 did have. So the box office performance of this movie is $62 million, $62.9 million domestic. Not high, but in 1985, it's the second highest grossing movie of the year. No, it's second highest grossing movie of its weekend, I should say. And it loses number one to Rambo: First Blood Part 2, which I think is hilarious. It opens in 1,700 theaters. It lasts about 8.3 weeks per theater, and it only opens to 9.1 million, so it grosses 62. It has legs for that summer. So you know what I mean? It plays about 8 weeks. It plays almost the entire summer, from June to September. The inflation adjusted domestic box office, Rich, any guesses?
Inflation adjusted, US, 350.
No, 186. But
186
is an interesting way for people to understand. For example, 186 right now domestic is very close to Sonic 3 and Mufasa, with a considerably more competition in the summer of 85, right? But so 186 is pretty great. Critical response then and now is super cool. We use Rotten Tomatoes. I use Rotten Tomatoes as a good aggregate, and it's a good way to get this. Tomato meter has it at 77. Popcorn meter has it at 91. That is remarkably high. And what I would say is, if people watch it again, they still love it. Like, it's still like, I think it's a movie you can show your kids. I think it's a movie you can show your nephews, who I wait until they're old enough to be like, yes, show us that.
Critics weren't totally enamored with this movie. There are some standouts who just didn't like it, but the people who saw it when it came out, the kids who saw it when it came out, for 99% of them loved it. I mean, there's still the 1% who prefer Monster Squad over this, and I understand.
I think it's a great double bill.
Or it would be a great double bill, yeah. But
I was, first off, it is a little bit dirtier than you remember. Like, there's a lot of shit early. They use the word shit like 5 times. They drop it super quick, super early. Hold on, I got comments. Let's see. Sup? Hi, Kyle. How are you? Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. Hey, brothers. I'm late, but I made it. We appreciate you. We know we changed times, but it's for the best. We're going to be better, and we're going to have a lot more stuff going on. I will say it did get some great review. Like, the audience score of 91 is remarkably high, considering that one of the things that happens on Rotten Tomatoes is movies that are from the 80s get put through a grinder. They get put through a meat grinder. Like, what doesn't work now, but this movie's still at 91, Rich. Like, this movie's still at 91, like, strong, where you're like, don't fuck with our Goonies, right? And the 77 is high. I was looking at it. The two that we love to talk about, the two that I love to talk about with you, because you're both thin and I'm both fat, are Ebert and Siskel, right? And they both loved it. Although, like, Siskel gives it like an underhanded 3 stars, Ebert was like, a smooth mixture of the usual ingredients from Steven Spielberg action movies made special because of the high energy performance of the kids who have the adventures. And then Siskel says, also gave it 3 stars out of 4, and wrote that after a dull start, some kind of minor movie miracle takes place, and the Goonies gets its act together as the kids stop trading wisecracks and get closer to finding their long-lost pirate treasure, thereby to help save their parents' homes. Only then do we accept the Goonies for what it is, a funny juvenile wind-up toy about kids in perilous comic book situations. And I think that's the thing for me that was driving today when I was watching it. The camaraderie, the friendship, everything that works in the movie is kind of an organic, amazing, bunch of kids hitting a certain age, realizing that in that Spielberg way, where life kind of can intrude upon childhood magic, And some people might find that syrupy, and some people might call it schmaltz, the Spielberg schmaltz, as I like to call it. Um,
Mm.
but I'm going to say to you, I think it works, and it's like it makes the adventure a little bit more important when like each of the kids has their moments, like the Corey Feldman moment or the Data moment, or the moment where like they're trying to make fun of it when Data comes in with a map and fucking Feldman's wearing the fucking Purple Rain shirt and he's like, "Well, have you ever heard of Detroit? Oh, I lost Rich. Oh no,
No. What?
you were gone for a second.
No,
You ever heard of
sorry.
Detroit?" And he's like, "It's only the murder capital of the world." And I just think the camaraderie, the gamesmanship, everything about this movie is kind of in a perfect 80s bubble that if you
Mm.
fuck with that if you pay attention, if you make fun of it or say something bad about it, people might throw you out of the bar or like say what the hell's wrong with you or whatever, where you're just like, let's not do that. Let's not
Nope.
let's not talk bad about the Goonies. Goonies never say die, kid. I just think the Donner direction is really skilled. The Spielberg touches are all there, like kids kind of being shook out of their suburban, dream facade, and dealing with foreclosure, dealing with rich people who are assholes, which we're all gonna get real close. Real, we're all
Yeah.
Goonies now. We're all Goonies now in 2025. And I just think that's so true. And anyway, so you have all this put together, and the adventure becomes great. It becomes like kind of a how long were you there? We've been here long enough, Mike. We know you. You said something nice to the pirate guy, right? And it's like a good adventure, and like I do want to talk about really quick. So Rich knows the story. I'm going to tell the story because I want it on film for this movie. My dad took me to a screening in New York City, and it was just one of the most glorious days of my life. We drove into New York. We went to an afternoon screening. What was the huge theater? I can't think of the name of it. What was the huge theater that was in downtown Manhattan? That was like, it was a big, huge, sprawling, um, grand
Kind of built the
old.
60s box.
Yeah, well, no, but like multiple floors. I can't think of the name of it. I want to say like the Lyceum. It's not the Lyceum.
Um,
Oh,
I'm trying to think of the one that I'm thinking of because we went there to see
yes,
Phantom Menace in digital.
yes, that's the theater. That's the theater.
Yeah,
That okay,
pulling
but
up
it's
here.
a very famous theater. It was a great day. My dad worked for a company. We got invited to a screening. So I saw
The
a
Ziegfeld?
version, the Ziegfeld. That's what it was. It was the Ziegfeld. One of the great New York theaters. It had a triple balcony. Like
Mhm.
it was in a beautiful theater. And I saw a version of the Goonies that had the octopus. So in the version I saw, they land in the water. Martha Plimpton gets attacked by an octopus that looked bad, really bad. And Data, to get rid of the octopus, puts his Walkman, presses the music, and puts the headphones on the octopus, and the octopus leaves. That's it. But I saw that version, so that moment is always in my heart as one of those
That was
things.
an exhibitor's thing, wasn't it?
They didn't like it, and and actually, I think the test audience. We also like the end. We didn't have the ship. We just had the outline of the ship going towards the sun. Like the storyboards weren't done yet. Because
Yeah.
that's one of the big effects in the movie. But it was one of those it was one of those movie experiences with my dad where I was just I remember the smell of popcorn. I remember where we were sitting and just like it's so vivid in my mind. And I was one of the few people that got to see the octopus, which is for a movie nerd just about the coolest thing. Anyway, I really love this movie and rewatching it today, I fell in love again. It's not that I wasn't in love with it, but sometimes when we revisit these great movies, Rich, you get that that little like the little salt where you go, oh my god, that's why I love this, right? And we should rewatch movies like this more often and in big theaters with audiences, just so you get like the gist.
I think it was the 1999. I'm trying to no. I would have been. I'm trying to remember which anniversary. I think it was the 20th anniversary of the Kirby Center, so it would have been like 2005. Because this is a 1985 movie. They showed a print as part of the celebrations. They screened a print of the Goonies, and it was so great to see on the big screen on a print that was a little ragged around the edges. Granted, it looks like maybe at least one
cigarette burns can't hurt. Little bit of cigarette burns can't hurt.
No, I mean, and you know, when it switches reels, you see some color registration shift slightly and stuff. And I'll admit, every film print has its own bit of character to it.
Yeah,
it's not as like that crisp, clean perfectness of digital. Yeah. And it was like really nice to see that. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. This is really nice. So if you
there was a moment in time where you went to see movies early because you didn't want them to degrade too much. You know what I mean? Like you went early because you were like, if I go to we didn't know that at the time. But
that's only after movie theater chains stopped hiring union projectionists.
Well, yes, we had
who would make sure that movie print looked as perfect as it did on day one as it would on day 100.
We had a great projectionist. My dad had a great projectionist. His name was Mel Cooperberg. Mel, I hope you're doing well wherever you are. So Sean writes, Goonies was awesome. It was absolutely one of the movies that when watching as a child, I had your imagination running on overdrive and you had dreams about it. Laugh out loud. At least I did as a child. No, I think everybody in that 80s time frame had those dreams, Sean. Don't hold back. I think the interesting thing is we do the critical response then and now because like sometimes what happens with 80s movies, Rich, is they lose their flavor or they lose their whatever. What makes them special was when they were released. But this is one of the ones rewatching it today. I was like, God damn, it's a good movie. It's a really good movie.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously some things that rooted in the 80s. Mouth's members only jacket, Steph's very short haircut, things like that. But at the same time, there's like Letterman sweaters. So it feels, so you got to get like a little
timeless quality to it. There's a timeless quality to it.
But the real timeless quality isn't in like something visual. It's in the idea that every kid wants an adventure. Every kid dreams of having a cool, fun adventure with their friends. That's like when, as a kid, you got on your bikes and you started riding around the neighborhood. You never knew what was going to happen. You were hoping something cool would happen, and you'd have that adventure.
Yes, and when your parents got those bikes, yes,
feeling so well that subsequent generations, when they come to this movie, they can watch it and go, yeah, I remember that, or yeah, I feel that way sometimes, I remember being a kid doing that,
Well, and the idea of like also every kid in the 80s wanted to help their parents in some way because most of our parents were struggling in the 80s, right? We're struggling with money problems or whatever. This is one of the movies that takes it head on, and again, kind of Spielberg flipping the script on the suburbia is always, he's so good at it, finding the right people. Like Donner at first glance doesn't look like a director you want to have directing it, but his meticulous nature and the way he handled the kids, he corralled them. And like, as you're thinking about it, like Donner did a lot of corralling in his career, right? Even if you go to Lethal Weapon movies, a lot of corralling, right? A lot of corralling, keeping people in place where they need to be. And he's just one of those directors that I don't think we celebrate enough. Okay. We now get to the most important, like this is like both the saddest and coolest thing. Legacy franchise availability. I have behind me a Ghostbusters Frozen Empire poster. Part of my new set for the new year. And I would say to you is what I would want from, I think there's two things. There's two thoughts on this process, right? We all want a sequel. But the thing that I come across when I'm reading all the legacy project stuff, at various times, Richard Donner, before he passed away, may he rest in peace, Spielberg and Lawrence Schuler Donner all had their hands on scripts. They all had hands on scripts. They all had ideas. They all had things, and it never came to pass. And Spielberg says in one portion, I was reading about it. he has a thing where he says, Chris Dick and I and Lauren have had a lot of conversations about a sequel. Every couple of years we come up with an idea, but then it doesn't hold water. And it's the most heart-wrenching thing that part of the reason we haven't had a legacy sequel is they just haven't had the right pass or somebody the right idea. Because
I would much prefer they'd rather do the right idea than do the idea they had right now.
Yes, that's the thing. Like, it's the sad legacy thing, franchise viability. Because you can't tell me that if they announce tomorrow, Rich, that they were going to make a Goonies sequel, that it wouldn't jump to your one of your more anticipated movies of 2026 just to see how we're going to do it, right?
Oh, yeah.
But the idea that the quality control is so high that they've had things in their hands and they've walked away.
They want to do it right. And
yes.
I prefer that. It's never been far from their hearts that, if they, every couple of years, if we take that quote at face value, that, every, 3, 4, 5 years, somebody calls everybody else up and goes, hey, how about this? And they talk about it over dinner. And then they're like, maybe not.
Like, I would love to know the sheer number of scripts that have come onto Spielberg's desk.
I don't even know if it got the scripting phases, but I'm sure there's probably lots of meeting notes that it would be fascinating reading.
Well, I was thinking about it today. I don't know what the maritime rules are, but don't the kids own the ship? They found it.
I think technically.
That's what I'm saying. Like, part of the problem.
I think what you're thinking there.
The extrapolation out is, wouldn't they? First off, they're all going to have super cool houses in the Boondocks, right? And I was thinking about it. Maybe the reason the script hasn't come about is because sometimes an ending is perfect the way it is.
That's true too.
We don't need a sequel. And so as much as we're longing for it, or we want it to happen, the idea that it hasn't is kind of okay too, right? Like, it's a weird legacy, because I think everybody from the 80s, when you and I are talking a lot, we'd love to see some of our movies remade from the 80s, or reestablishment of some of the IP from the 80s, like The Last Starfighter, or this, or Return of the Living Dead, or something where they come up with an idea that kind of like ties into the original in some way. But the fact that these fucking gatekeepers that we have for this franchise, and the fact that we lost the main gatekeeper, one of the things that came up May 2021, Feldman stated that despite Chris Columbus saying that he is writing a sequel, the chances for a sequel are dead, as Donner had chosen to direct Lethal Finale as his final film. And the cast had all agreed privately not to return if Donner was not involved. Then Richard Donner died 2 months later, making the idea fair. That, I think that is fair. I also think part of the allure of coming back for all those kids would be to work with Richard Donner as adults, right? And and all of them have kind of other legacy things we're talking about here. Sean Astin became Samwise Gamgee. Josh Brolin became Thanos.
Well, take a step back here. This is something Natasha and I were talking about earlier today, actually. Because because she's working on a stage production, getting ready for that. But she's like, she's not a big fan of the Goonies, but she did say Sean Astin is like one of those very generational actors that, depending what generation you're in, the first thing you think about him, the first thing that he's been in that you think about when somebody mentions his name is, for my generation, it's Goonies. For another generation, it's Lord of the Rings. Or another generation, it's Stranger Things.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, if you're around my generation, but you're not thinking of Goonies, you're thinking of Rudy.
Yes.
Just a couple years later.
Yeah, he has been attached to some of the most loved and beloved films of all time. He's had
an incredibly iconic career.
Yes. And the Stranger Things should not be lost on people, how much people love that character. And when his character, spoiler, when that character passed away, people were not fucking happy at all, when that character died, when Bob died, right? So I mean, I think that's interesting. Brolin was Thanos. Brolin's been in fucking Coen Brothers movie. Brolin has become a really great actor. Dune, also behind me.
Yes.
And then I proudly get to say Ke Huy Quan, Oscar winner. You know what I mean? Yes.
I was, when that happened, I was so moved for him.
Yes.
Because of how moved he was in the moment.
Yeah, that's what the Oscar. That's a magical Oscars moment.
That night, Natasha's sitting on the couch. I'm sitting here, writing up my Filmbuff on coverage as we were going, and we're both, I think, we were very we both cried about it. Very happy for him. Fast forward to this past year when I was at the Academy Museum for their Academy Awards section. They have this big long room with all these screens showing Oscar acceptance speeches, and from all the different years, and they rotate through, and sound comes up on certain ones at certain times. I literally walk into that gallery as Key's Oscar speech comes up, and he's like, I did it, Mom, that whole thing. And I almost burst into tears again. I was kind of so moved that I was around all this history anyway. And I walk in and I'm like, oh my God, that was it was just.
And now we're also now he's he's kind of branching out. He's got Love Hurts coming up in a couple weeks, so it's the legacy of this movie is a bunch of really good kid performances where people went on to do a bunch of other things. Martha Plimpton had a very good career. Kerri Green had a good career. Everybody involved in this movie, Corey Feldman, Lost Boys, Dream a Little Dream.
Had Corey Feldman's career. We'll leave it at that.
Well, but other legacy things that you can pay attention to. Josh Gad did a fantastic virtual reunion on Zoom as Reunited Apart, which was a charity function during COVID. It was an amazing thing to watch. April 27, 2020 is when it occurred. All of them come, and they've also done versions where they've taken the script and played the characters and casts. So it is a film that is, other things that there's been rumors of a Goonies musical, which, we have a Back to the Future musical. Why wouldn't we have a Goonies musical? There's been also there were several chances to try to put it on in cartoon form or comic book form that never kind of done. Richard Donner also once said, we tried really hard, and Steven said, let's do it. We had a lot of young writers submit work, but it just didn't seem to call for it. Richard Donner once said about the Goonies too. There was also a Cartoon Network show that was shelved. There was a thing akin to the Raiders of the Lost Ark shot-for-shot remake about somebody trying to remake shot-for-shot the Goonies.
That seems incredibly insane, but did they get it done, though?
It seems that, so it was 2020. Fox ordered a pilot for drama from Sarah Watson, creator of The Bold Type, about a woman helping film students create a shot-for-shot remake of The Goonies. Greg Mottola was attached as the director. Executive producer Richard Donner and his wife. Yeah, that's part of it. Fox announced the pilot would not be moving forward. Disney Plus picked up a series for development, now titled Our Time. So it's still out there in the ether. And the last thing I want to talk about really quick before we end for the night, because we're a little bit above time, but it's not like we've been missing for a while. I do want to talk about the one story that I came across that was really great. So, in the history of movie candy, the Baby Ruth placement in this movie is one of the greatest stories, and it's something you should go and research and look up. But at an all-time high in 1985, after everything that happened with Reese's Pieces and everything, Nabisco, who had owned the parent company that owned Baby Ruth, paid $100,000 for Sloth and Chunk to share a Baby Ruth, which is one of the all-time highest product placements ever. One Baby Ruth, one scene, 2 lines of dialogue. 100,000, baby. Hollywood is a place of dreams. But yeah, I think that's the most.
That's how you pay for your movie.
Yes,
you do enough like that.
I have no problems with it. And I also looked at it and just went, it's one of the cooler movie marketing things, because we have a lot of those, but like things that become iconic, like the Baby Ruth, or things that become, it's a real interesting story, don't you think? Like, and I just think it's one of those things where you go and you look at it and you go, how things happen are amazing, right? How things come to pass where you're like, what candy gets into what movie? And think about how important it was for Baby Ruth, because they made a ton of money off this particular thing. So yeah, perfect way to end it. Baby Ruth. So yeah, I rewatched today and I was just enamored by how much I love this movie. I encourage everybody to show their kids and kind of get everybody involved, because it's just one of those movies where just, even when the kids are cursing or playing with a Michelangelo David, it's still okay. Like it's not nearly as vulgar as the Monster Squad, which has aged well, but is still pretty vulgar. But it was one of those things where it was like, I didn't remember Goonies being this well. And then I was thinking about like One Eyed Willie, kind of filthy for 85, kind of filthy. But okay,
that's
Rich,
a joke for the audience, the parents who take.
Where can people find your stuff, Rich?
All of my writing can be found at filmbuffonline.com. We also have a Facebook page that lets you know when news posts go up, or also some interesting fun tidbits that history tidbits that are exclusive to the Facebook page. Right now at the site, we're in the middle of our look at the 50 seasons of Saturday Night Live. We're doing a big long series of articles, me and my good friend Bill. And this one, the most recent one we just put up, was part of the sub-series called Spawn of Saturday Night Live, looking at other sketch shows that came out in the wake of Saturday Night Live and very much that are influenced. So this most recent article, we looked at the very short-lived The New Show from January of 1984, produced by Lorne Michaels and starring Buck Henry, Dave Thomas, and Valerie Blomfeld. It wasn't great, but I think it's a little bit better than most history would have you believe it was. I also do a podcast with my very good best friend, Natasha Bogutsky, called The Big Picture Podcast. New episode will drop sometime later this week. We talked for an hour and 40 minutes yesterday, and I'm having it's just a little bit of a time to edit that all down. The other podcast I do is the Philadelphia Film Critics Circles
podcast. A lot of podcasts these days.
I know.
Busy.
I can't shut the F up. That one's called Film Scribes. A new episode for that will be coming out next week, which I believe we're going to be recording on Sunday. And you can find me on the socials at FilmbuffRich on Twitter and Blue Sky.
So here's what I got going on. JW Movie Guy, Facebook, Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, Instagram. All of those, JW the Movie Guy. We also do a good show on Tuesday nights called Loud and Nerdy. I will be back there tomorrow night with my good friends, Jerry and Kyle. I'm looking forward to seeing them. We haven't seen each other in a while. I'd like my mouth to stop hurting, but that's great. And then we have a bunch of new shows on the network, including this guy, Troy Hill Talks. Premiered his big show last week, and then I will be on it this week. I will be coming late, but I will be there. We're going to discuss the 10 most anticipated movies of 2025 from 3 different people, coming up with, I would assume, some similar ones. Obviously, Superman should be on everybody's list as one. Just saying, I'm not judging you if it's not, but I'm kind of judging you if it's not. And I'll be here tomorrow night doing Loud Nerdy. And then next week we go from the bucolic wonder and childhood amazement to what's in the box. Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman, 7 Deadly Sins, a screenplay rich. Do you know how the screenplay was written for 7? We're going to talk about it next week, so we'll see what happens.
We'll talk about it next week, yeah. But
yeah, we'll talk about it next week.
Something Walker?
Yeah, Andrew Walker. I think it's
Andrew Walker, yeah.
But thank you for joining us tonight. We're glad to be back. We plan to have an amazing 2025. We're already well underway. This is the book that I use. I use oddly enough, it is very much like a ruled wide notebook that John Doe uses in 7 to plan out. Yeah, it's not creepy. But we're planning on great things. We expect to have a couple things back. Oscar Decade Cavalcade. We're coming really perilously close to not having any more bonds to do. But we might do that. And also, we're super excited. March, when Natasha gets a little bit of time, Natasha's going to come in and we're going to have her do a month of programming where Rich and I are going to watch movies that she would like to discuss on our program. We're super excited to be back. We're super excited for the growth of the network. Again, warm welcome to Troy and comedian. Oh my God, I just went up on his fucking name. Bass. What the fuck is wrong with me? I'm so terrible. I'm a terrible person. I'm a bad person. It's not good. That's why I'm a comedian. Robert Bass. I couldn't think of his name. Just my mouth is so sore, Rich. Comedian Robert Bass and Troy Hill have joined our network. We're super happy to have them. Thank you for joining us tonight. We'll see everybody for Loud Nerdy tomorrow. Well, Rich won't, but I will. And we'll see everybody on Troy Hill Talks on Thursday. Thank you for joining us tonight. Have a great night. Stay safe.